I saw it straight on, nothing covering it. And at first, I thought it was a person, but that idea didn't last more than a second because it didn't fit. It was about 30 or 40 meters away, standing between the trees, fully upright and looking directly at me. I had walked out alone that morning, following a stream in the Chugach National Forest, just looking for a quiet spot to fish, no rush. The forest had been normal, with the sound of water and a few birds, until at some point, everything got quieter than usual. Not completely silent, but enough for me to notice and stop. When I looked up, it was already there. Too tall, easily over 2 meters, with broad shoulders and long arms hanging in a way that didn't feel entirely human. It wasn't wearing anything, its body covered in dark hair, mostly uniform, though some areas looked lighter where the light filtered through the branches. It didn't move, didn't seem surprised. It didn't feel like I had found it, it felt like it already knew I was there. I stayed still for a few seconds, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then it turned its head slightly, a slow movement, like it was tracking me without needing to shift its body. There was no sign of it wanting to run or attack, just a way of observing that didn't feel instinctive, more deliberate. I took a step back, slowly, without taking my eyes off it, then another. That's when I noticed a small shift in its posture, like it adjusted its weight. It didn't step forward, but it was enough to understand that it didn't want me getting any closer. I stopped. After a few seconds, it started moving, diagonally, putting distance between us through the trees. It didn't run, it walked calmly, but with a kind of certainty that stood out. Despite its size, it made very little noise, much less than you'd expect. Before it disappeared completely, it paused for a moment and turned its head toward me again. It was brief, but clear. That was it. There were no more strange sounds after that. The forest went back to normal. I stayed there for a bit, more to process what had just happened than anything else. Then I walked back to camp without rushing, but without wandering either. Later, near the stream, I found tracks. They were deep and longer than my foot, with a defined shape, not like an animal with claws. They were spaced out like whatever made them had been taking long, steady steps. They didn't look old. I didn't say much when I got back. I wasn't sure how to explain it without it sounding forced. But after that, I didn't go out alone again, and the next day, I decided to leave earlier than planned. Not because I felt like something was going to happen right then, but because I understood something simple. I wasn't the only one out there, and I probably never had been. It wasn't the first time we had been in that part of the forest. The previous summer, we had taken the same trail without any issues, so when we decided to go back, no one expected anything to be different. There were 3 of us: Ethan, Caleb, and me. Ethan always carried an old handycam, worn out but still working, and he used it to record everything, even the most ordinary moments. He said he liked reviewing things later, catching details you don't notice at the time. The second day was when everything changed. We had set up camp near a stream. The sound of the water was constant, enough to cover smaller noises, but you could still hear the forest. Leaves shifting, branches cracking somewhere in the distance, the usual. That night, Ethan left the camera recording while we were preparing food. There was no real reason for it, he just set it on a log pointing toward the tree line. At some point, Caleb stopped talking. He didn't say anything right away, just froze for a second. Then he asked quietly, "Did you hear that?" At first, I thought it was the wind or maybe a small animal, but when I paid attention, I understood what he meant. It wasn't loud, it was heavier. Footsteps, but not like a deer or anything quick. These were slow, deliberate, like something moving carefully, but not trying to hide its weight. We all went silent. I stared into the trees, trying to make out any shape in the dark, but there was nothing clear, just shadows between the trunks. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and pointed it directly toward where we thought the sound was coming from. The moment he did, everything stopped. The sound didn't fade, it didn't move away, it just ended. That was what made it uncomfortable. Caleb lowered his voice even more and said, "We're not alone." No one answered. No one made a joke to break the tension. We just stood there, listening, trying to figure out if there was a normal explanation for what we had heard. The stream kept running. The wind didn't change, but something felt off, like the rest of the forest had gone still. After a few minutes, Ethan walked over to check the camera. He didn't say anything at first, he just stared at the screen. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer right away. He rewound a few seconds and played it again. At first, the video looked normal, us moving around near the fire, the sound of the water, everything as it had been. But then, just before Caleb asked if we had heard something, there was movement between the trees. It wasn't clear, there was no defined shape, but something moved behind a trunk from one side to the other. It was taller than anything we expected to see out there. Ethan paused the frame. "That wasn't there when we looked." No one argued, because it was true. If something like that had been that close, we would have seen it. We didn't sleep much that night. We kept the fire going longer than usual and stayed close to camp. The next morning, we found something else. There were tracks near the stream, a few meters from where we had been. They weren't clear enough to identify any specific animal, but they were deep enough to show weight. Larger than normal, spaced like whatever made them had taken long, steady steps. Caleb was the first to say we should leave. No one disagreed. We packed up faster than usual. No one talked much while taking down the camp. Before we left, Ethan looked at the footage one more time. "There's another part," he said. He didn't show it there. We only watched it later, back in town. In the last part of the video, just before he turns the camera off, you can hear something. It's not an animal. It's not the wind. It's breathing. Slow, deep, and way too close to the microphone. And none of us were anywhere near it at that moment. I went out with a webcam strapped to my head, mostly for convenience. I wanted my hands free while walking and figured I'd just let it record everything without thinking too much about it. I was in a damp area of the Chugach National Forest, following a stretch of the stream I hadn't explored before. It was still daytime, but the light was already coming in low through the trees, so the image looked dim, with long shadows and uneven contrast. The recording starts off simple, steady footsteps, the ground covered in leaves, roots, bits of water coming in and out of frame depending on how I moved my head. Nothing staged, no odd pauses. I'm walking calmly, even talking to myself a couple of times. Random comments I didn't even remember making later. At one point, I cross the stream at a shallow section and move a few meters deeper into the trees. That's when things shift, but not all at once. It starts as a feeling that's hard to place, like when something's off but you can't point to what it is. In the video, it's not obvious at first, but you can hear it. I stop making noise for a moment, like I paused without realizing it. Then I lift my head a bit more and the camera picks up something in the background. It's not a sudden appearance or a typical jump scare. It's a figure that's already there, standing slightly turned between two thick trunks. Not close, but not far enough to blend into the surroundings either. The overall shape is clear. The first thought I had, watching it later, was that it looked like a very tall person, but it doesn't really hold up. The proportions are off, especially the arms, which hang lower than they should. The upper body is wide, more compact through the torso, and the whole thing is covered in a dark, fairly uniform tone. In the recording, you can tell that's the moment I notice it. The camera movement settles, pointing more directly toward that spot. I don't say anything, but my breathing changes, slower, like I'm trying not to make noise. The figure doesn't hide. It doesn't move right away either. It stays there for a few seconds, completely still, like it's watching. No sudden motions, no signs of panic or flight. That's what feels off when you watch it closely. Then it does something small but clear. It shifts the upper part of its body just enough to face more toward me. It's not an animal movement, it's controlled. That's when I take a step back. The camera picks up the movement with a slight shake. In that moment, the figure changes position, but you don't see the full motion. It's like it used that brief disruption in the frame. It appears slightly to the side now, partially behind another tree, but more aligned with me. It doesn't run, doesn't crouch, doesn't disappear. It stays within view. I keep stepping back, slowly. No panic, no sudden movements, just a measured retreat without completely losing sight of it. In the audio, all you hear is the water, my steps, and my breathing, which is no longer steady. Then I turn. The camera shifts to the path back, the ground again, branches, parts of the stream. I walk faster, but not running. I don't look back at any point. The recording continues for a few more minutes until I turn it off near the camp. It wasn't until later, when I reviewed it carefully, that I understood what had been captured. It's not a clean or impressive video, but it's clear enough to rule out a normal animal or a person. Whatever shows up in those frames doesn't act surprised or lost. It behaves like it knew exactly where I was the entire time.